The crystal chandelier above the long mahogany dining table gave off a faint electric hum, the kind you only notice when the room is too quiet and your nerves are stretched thin. The vibration crawled up through the polished wood, into the chair, and settled somewhere behind my eyes, like a headache waiting for permission to bloom. Outside, snow pressed softly against the tall windows, turning the world white and clean, but inside my father's dining room, the air felt thick, heavy, almost hostile. It was Christmas Day, the holiday people use as proof that families are loving and whole, yet nothing about this room felt warm. It felt sealed, like a pressure chamber where one wrong breath could make everything explode. The smell of roasted rosemary chicken hung in the air, rich and sharp, mixing with the deep, expensive scent of Pinot Noir. I knew exactly how much that wine cost, because I had ordered it myself days earlier through a discreet delivery service that promised anonymity and perfection. I had paid for everything, as I always did, quietly and without recognition. The table was set with heirloom china, polished silverware, crystal glasses that caught the chandelier's light and fractured it into tiny rainbows. From the outside, it looked like a magazine spread of success and tradition. From the inside, it felt like a stage built for my humiliation. I sat perfectly still, my fingers lightly tracing the rim of my wine glass, following the curve again and again as if it might ground me. Across the table sat my father, Arthur Vance, leaning back with the ease of a man who believed he owned the world. He wore a velvet smoking jacket, deep burgundy, tailored to perfection, his hair carefully groomed into distinguished silver. He looked every bit the patriarch, the powerful head of a powerful family, radiating confidence he had not earned in years. His posture alone demanded respect, and everyone at the table gave it to him without question. My mother sat beside him, stiff and quiet, her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on her plate as if the pattern in the porcelain were suddenly fascinating. My brother Marcus lounged in his chair, his mouth twitching with amusement he didn't bother to hide. My sister Bianca leaned forward slightly, perfectly composed, her diamond earrings glittering with every small movement of her head. I recognized those earrings immediately. I had bought them for her last birthday, after her third engagement, when she cried about needing something timeless. Then the moment came. Not with shouting, not with drama. It came softly, deliberately, like a blade sliding between ribs. "Elena," my father said, his voice dropping into that familiar tone of practiced disappointment. The one he used in boardrooms, at charity dinners, anywhere he needed to appear patient and burdened by someone else's failure. He didn't look at me when he spoke. He swirled his wine slowly, watching the liquid cling to the glass. "You have to stop this." I lifted my eyes to him, my hand freezing against the glass. The room seemed to hold its breath. "You have to stop begging for money," he continued, still not meeting my gaze. "It's Christmas. And frankly, we're all exhausted by your constant handouts." The words landed with a dull finality, like a judge's gavel. For a second, I honestly wondered if I had misheard him. The irony was so thick it almost made me dizzy. My fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against the china, the sharp sound echoing far louder than it should have in the sudden silence. I looked around the table searching for something. Confusion, discomfort, any sign that someone would challenge him. My mother stared harder at her plate. Marcus raised his napkin to his mouth, pretending to dab his lips while hiding a smirk. And then Bianca leaned in, her voice low but perfectly audible in the quiet room. "It's just so pathetic," she whispered, her lips curling slightly. The diamonds at her ears caught the chandelier's light as she moved. "We've all worked so hard for what we have. Seeing you constantly scraping at Dad's heels, it's embarrassing for the family name." My father nodded slowly, as if she had simply articulated a shared truth. "Everyone agrees," he said calmly. "We've decided, no more, not a cent. You need to learn the value of $1, even if you have to learn it in the gutter." Something inside me went very still. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't argue or defend myself. Instead, a strange, icy clarity washed over me, the way it does when a fever finally breaks and the pain becomes distant. In that moment, every late night, every quiet transfer, every carefully maintained lie lined up neatly in my mind. For 5 years, I had played the role of the struggling artist, the disappointing daughter, while quietly building a venture capital empire behind a corporate veil none of them had ever bothered to look behind. For 5 years I'd funneled 6 figures a month into the family trust they all lived off, letting them believe it was leftover magic from my grandfather's investments. I pushed my chair back and stood slowly. No one stopped me. I didn't look at the food, didn't look at the wrapped gifts under the tree, all of them purchased with my black card. I looked at my father. "I understand," I said softly. My voice surprised even me with how empty it sounded. "You're right, it's time to stop." Then I turned and walked out. Behind me, Bianca laughed, light and relieved. "Finally," she said. "She gets the hint." Cold December air hit my face as I stepped outside, sharp enough to sting my lungs. I walked to my car, a modest sedan I kept specifically for family visits, slid into the driver's seat and closed the door. The silence inside the car felt different, cleaner. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in months. It didn't ring long. It never did. "This is Elena Vance," I said, watching my breath fog the windshield. "Identity verification, Echo 79er. I need to execute a total liquidity freeze on the final 21 distribution account. Immediate effect. No grace period." There was no hesitation on the other end of the line. Only calm professionalism. "Understood, Ms. Vance," the bank manager replied. "The final 21 account funds the primary household dividends for the Vance estate. This action will cut all lines of credit and recurring payments." "Do it," I said, "and transfer the deed of the Greenwich property from the holding company to my personal portfolio. It's time for the tenants to vacate." I ended the call, started the engine, and pulled away from the house without looking back, unaware that this single decision had just set fire to every lie my family had built their lives on. To understand why I did it, you have to understand the lie we had been living for years. My father, Arthur Vance, was a man built entirely on appearance. Prestige without substance, authority without foundation. He had once been successful, or at least close enough to it that people assumed the rest. But when I was 18, just old enough to understand what money meant and just young enough to still be afraid of losing stability, he destroyed the last of the real family fortune. A string of reckless real estate gambles, fueled by ego and bad advice, wiped it all out. He never told anyone. Not my mother, not his friends, not even himself, if we're being honest. What Arthur Vance could not survive was the truth. So he chose illusion instead. He doubled down on the image of the powerful patriarch, the wise investor, the man whose wealth was so secure it didn't need explanation. Bills were delayed, notices were hidden, loans were taken quietly, shuffled between banks that trusted his name more than his numbers. And while he pretended, I watched. I saw the red letters from the banks. I heard the late-night phone calls through thin walls. I felt the fear he buried under arrogance. I was the one who stayed up in my college dorm teaching myself how markets worked, how capital moved, how risk could be calculated instead of gambled. While my classmates partied, I studied charts. While my family assumed I was failing, I learned how to trade, how to build companies, how to scale ideas into assets. By 24, I made my first million. By 27, I was worth more than my father had ever been, even at his peak, but I knew my family too well to ever tell them. If they knew I had money, they wouldn't ask for help. They would demand ownership. They would rewrite history until my success became family success and my accounts became our accounts. So I created a lie that fit perfectly inside theirs. The final 21 account. I told my father I had uncovered a forgotten trust in my grandfather's name, some overlooked investment vehicle that had matured quietly. I let him believe he managed it. In reality, he never touched the principal. Every dollar came from me. I paid for everything. Bianca's 3 weddings and 2 divorces. Marcus's so-called startups, which were really just excuses to party in Ibiza and Dubai. The staff's salaries, the vacations, the maintenance on the estate, even the wine my father drank while accusing me of begging. And in exchange, I accepted my role as the family disappointment, the struggling artist, the cautionary tale. They needed someone beneath them to feel secure standing on nothing. The lie worked because I made it comfortable. Until Christmas night, when my father decided to use it as a weapon. His speech at dinner wasn't just cruelty, it was strategy. Bianca's new fiancé was wealthy, old money wealthy, and my father needed to perform. He needed to look like the benevolent provider burdened by an ungrateful daughter. He needed power. So he humiliated me publicly, believing I would swallow it like I always had. By the time I reached my city penthouse later that night, the decision felt inevitable. I slept better than I had in years. The fallout didn't take weeks. It took hours. Boxing Day morning arrived quietly. Snow dusted the skyline outside my floor-to-ceiling windows as I sat in my kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through notifications on my tablet. At 9:14 a.m., the first alert came in. Secondary household card declined. Bianca's card. At 9:17, another decline. Then another. By 10:30, the calls started. Bianca first. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was sharp, irritated, still confident. Elena, are you doing something to the accounts? My card just got declined. At Hermes. It's probably a glitch, but if you're messing around because of last night, stop it. It's embarrassing. Marcus called next. Then my mother, her message shaky and confused. Finally, at 11:46 a.m., my father's name lit up my screen. I waited. Let it ring. On the 10th ring, I answered. Elena, he bellowed, panic bleeding through his anger. There's been a mistake at the bank. The trust account is frozen. All of it. The mortgage payment bounced this morning. Payroll is blocked. I need you to call your little contacts and fix this. I leaned back in my chair, calm in a way that surprised me. Why would I do that, Dad? I asked. You told me to stop begging for money. You told me to learn the value of $1. I've taken your advice. I'm no longer involved with your finances. Don't be a child, he shouted. This is family money. This is our legacy. No, I said quietly, my voice dropping, sharpening. It was my money. There was no grandfather's trust. I built that account. I funded every vacation, every bottle of wine, every lie you told yourself. There was a pause. Avy and jagged. I could hear his breathing, ragged now. You're lying, he whispered. You've always been a failure. Check the ownership of the house, Dad, I replied. Check the deed. It's held by EV Ventures. Want to guess what EV stands for? I ended the call, knowing the truth was already tearing through everything he thought he controlled. The next few days unfolded like a slow, merciless symphony, each movement exposing another layer of truth my family had buried for years. The freeze on the final 21 account didn't just stop spending, it pulled the pin on a grenade my father had been sitting on for a decade. Without the monthly cash infusion, his private debts he had hidden even from my mother, came roaring to the surface. Loans taken against nothing. Promises backed by reputation alone, creditors who had been patient, polite, almost friendly when interest payments arrived on time suddenly became relentless. I watched it all from a distance, not with joy, but with a strange detached calm. Through the security cameras I had installed at the estate years earlier, supposedly for protection, I saw the truth unfold in real time. Repo trucks rolling up the long driveway, men in suits walking away with keys. Bianca screaming at a tow operator as her convertible was hauled away, her voice shrill and useless against paperwork she didn't understand. I saw my father standing on the front porch, shoulders slumped, staring at the empty driveway like a man watching his rifle. Action finally disappear. 2 weeks later I returned to the estate, not as a guest, as the owner. The house was cold. The heating bill hadn't been paid. The grand rooms echoed with emptiness, stripped of the warmth money had always provided. The massive Christmas tree in the living room was brown now, needles carpeting the floor like evidence of neglect. My family sat huddled together near a single space heater, their expensive clothes hanging loosely on them, their faces drained of the arrogance they once wore so comfortably. Fear had replaced it, raw, unfiltered. Bianca stood when she saw me, her eyes swollen, her makeup smeared. Elena, please, she said. We didn't know. Dad said it was his. He said. You were very comfortable not knowing, I replied calmly. Very comfortable enjoying it. My father sat in his chair, his velvet jacket stained, his hands trembling slightly. He didn't look up. You've humiliated me, he croaked. Your own father. You humiliated yourself the moment you chose your ego over the truth, I said. I didn't destroy this family. I just stopped holding it together with my silence. I placed a manila envelope on the coffee table. The sound it made felt louder than it should have. The house is being sold, I continued. I've accepted an offer from a developer. You have 72 hours to pack your personal belongings. My mother gasped softly. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it again, realizing there was nothing left to argue. There's a small 2-bedroom apartment in the city, I said. It's paid for 1 year. After that, Marcus, you'll need a job. Bianca, you might want to sell those diamonds I bought you. Dad, you can live on Social Security. I hear it's what people who understand the value of $1 do. You can't do this, Marcus muttered, but even he didn't believe it. I already did, I said. The final 21 account was the end of the line. I gave you 21 chances to treat me like a human being instead of a resource. Last night was the 21st. I turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Dad. Merry Christmas. I hope you enjoyed the dinner. It was the most expensive meal you'll ever have. I walked out without looking back. The air outside was still cold, but it didn't bite the way it used to. I drove back to the city, to the life I had built with my own 2 hands. The silence in the car wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. The revenge wasn't in the poverty I left them in. It was in the freedom I finally claimed. They had always called me a beggar, but as the estate disappeared in my rearview mirror, I knew the truth. I was the only one who had ever been rich. The end.